Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. We're talking education tonight. This is June 18th, 2017. I want to talk to you about the gods of public education. I'll give you a little hint. The whole idea that colleges are indoctrinating our children is not a myth. 3 colleges in Philadelphia have decided that if they wait until incoming freshmen actually start classes before they begin brainwashing these kids with liberal social justice theories, it may already be too late. And to that end, Bryn Mawr, Swarthmore, and Haverford College are planning a tri-college identity, equity, and social justice summer institute to make sure that at least 60 of these newbies get a crash course in the wacko ideas that constitute the left's progressive ideology. The program, according to its designers, has the goal of getting students to become social agents for change with their own institutions, the United States, and the world. And you probably don't have to guess what their idea of change consists of. It certainly doesn't mean they'll give these students a course in persuasion so they can go out and use those skills to change the world. No, these students will be told exactly what's wrong with the world and what they should do to make it the way it should be. And to that end, according to the literature, the students will be taught about power and privilege. They will be taught about their identity groups. They will participate in activities like physical exercises to help them better understand how white men, Christians, and other majority groups are holding the rest of the world under their thumbs. This isn't new, but it does seem that in Philadelphia and other places, liberals are turning up the volume just a little bit. They don't want to just make conservative ideology a thing of the past. They want to make it clear to these incoming students that that sort of thing has no place in their colleges and no place in the world at large. And they're going to increasingly greater lengths to see that every student gets that indoctrination. Along with this is a 2016 study that discovered roughly 2/3 of college graduates believe their schools failed to train them in one of the most important aspects of critical thinking, namely, the ability to formulate and ask questions of their own. That number, 2/3, comes into even sharper focus with a recent study that was released by the Wall Street Journal analyzing the College Learning Assessment Plus test. They were surprised that it was the less prestigious colleges which managed to expand the critical reasoning skills of students during their tenure on campus. Digging further, they found that 20% of the tested schools, 1/3 or more of their senior students, had only basic critical thinking skills. My guess is they had them coming in. Even more alarming is the fact that a couple schools saw the critical thinking skills of their students decline between the freshman and senior years. In his book entitled The End of Education, Redefining the Value of School, former NYU professor Neil Postman names the 4 gods that he believes American children are being taught to worship within the walls of today's public schools, and perhaps has found the reason they do so poorly in this area. These gods are described as the god of economic utility. Postman describes this god by saying it is a passionless god, cold and severe. It says if you will pay attention in school, do your homework, score well on tests, and behave yourself, you will be rewarded with a well-paying job when you're done. To understand, simply check out the U.S. Department of Education, which defines the goal of America's educational system as working to make students college and career ready. The second God is the God of consumership. According to Postman, this God pushes the student to be career ready, a concept closely tied to a materialistic worldview. It is implied that today's students should want successful jobs so they can live a comfortable existence in modern society. It means that the God of economic utility and the God of consumerism are intertwined. Their worship is expressed in the slogan, "Whoever dies with the most toys wins," which is another way of saying goodness inheres in those who buy things, evil in those who don't. The third God is the God of technology. Postman writes, "Nowhere do you find more enthusiasm for the God of technology than among educators." In describing this God, Portman clarifies that he's not against using technology in schools. What he's against, he writes, is the idea in the minds of some college professors that simply providing children with iPads and laptops will create more interest in studies and remove some of the discipline and hard work that's traditionally accompanied with the learning process. And finally, number 4 is the God of multiculturalism. Postman takes pains to differentiate this from cultural pluralism. He regards multiculturalism, as a psychopathic version of cultural pluralism. He describes it this way: to multiculturalists, oppression is the key to understanding white history, literature, art, and almost everything else of European origin. In their view, there is no possibility of proceeding in a fair-minded way unless the narratives of the white Europeans are overthrown. Now, the white Europeans under consideration hail from the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages is considered one of the most religious periods in the history of Christian civilization. Their God is purposeful and unyielding, hence their rigid code of ethic and industry. We call it the Protestant work ethic. To doubt God's existence, never entered these minds. Today, life and religion are very different. In Postman's experience, he writes, the typical man does not question the validity of at least 3 of these contemporary gods: the economic utility, the consumerism, and the technology. And more often than not, willingly accepts all 4. He sees these gods as contemporary axioms of modern education, and then takes pains to point out how significantly they diverge from the educational philosophy that prevailed in the West over 2,000 years and in modern times. Test scores and the rise of remedial education in college reveal that America's public education system may no longer be effective at teaching students the basics. But, he argues, they remain an effective catechist for education's gods, for the progressives' gods. A catechist? Yeah, as in a catechism, rote learning. The author of this article is vice president of intellectual takeout. He has a bachelor's degree in philosophy and Catholic studies from the University of St. Thomas. He has an MA and a PhD in systematic theology from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. He knows a little bit of whereof he speaks. Along with all this is the refreshing effort to reorient American young people toward apprenticeships rather than college. You could have seen that one coming, couldn't you? Apprenticeships first appeared in the later Middle Ages as an opportunity for young people, usually between the ages of 10 to 15, to gain practical skills, on-the-job training from a master craftsman. These adolescent apprentices came of age immersed in authentic experiences and surrounded by adult mentors. In short, they grew up in reality. The term adolescence did not exist. It comes from a 15th century Latin word meaning to grow up or to grow into maturity, but it wasn't until 1904 that Stanley Hall, the first president of the American Psychological Association, coined the term to identify a separate and distinct phase of human development. The expansion of compulsory schooling statutes, particularly for teenagers, as well as new child labor laws, artificially extended childhood and gave rise to the typical teenager stereotype that persists even today. Now, I know some of you doubt me, many of you mock me, especially when I rail against the psychological community for their artificial constructs and the chaos that they've created. But here it is again. A teenager today is not expected to do anything but go to school and have fun. There was a time they went to work and contributed to the family. Care to guess when psychological problems started appearing in families and individuals? Adolescence became a social construct in the middle of the 20th century. Most of the research into adolescence, often viewed in pathological terms, didn't begin till the 1940s. Think Dr. Spock. He wrote a raft of books to help moms raise their kids. He raised an entire generation. They came to age in the 60s, and they were a mess. In the 70s or early 80s, I think it was, he publicly apologized for the damage he had done through his books. Think Woodstock, drugs, sex, rock and roll. Children removed from genuine, real-life experiences and confined to a restrictive, artificial, mass schooling environment. It's no wonder that adolescents often respond with apathy, angst, and anger. But this is not how teenagers have historically behaved, nor how they behave today in many parts of the world. In many parts of the world, they operate like adults. As psychologist Robert Epstein, author of The Case Against Adolescence, writes, quote, "The social emotional turmoil experienced by many young people in the United States is entirely a creation of modern culture. We produce such turmoil by infantilizing our young and isolating them from adults. Modern schooling and restrictions on youth labor are remnants of the Industrial Revolution that are no longer appropriate for today's world. The exploitive factories are long gone. We have the ability now to provide mass education on an individual basis. You never have to leave home. Teenagers are inherently capable young adults. To undo the damage we've done, we need to establish competency-based systems that give these young people worth and opportunity and incentive to join the adult world as quickly as possible. Apprenticeships can be a valuable, time-tested approach to connect adolescents to the authentic, practical experiences of this adult world. As the Chronicle of Higher Education points out, quote, President Trump plans to rework college accreditation and student aid policies in a bid to encourage greater use of apprenticeship training in higher education, end of quote. Apprenticeship programs are a win-win for both the apprentices and the employers who need to hire and train them. Adolescents gain beneficial abilities and connection to the authentic adult world, while employers generate a pipeline of skilled workers. Teenagers are not innately troubled, but they are institutionally stifled. The key is to support their natural development by removing them from restrictive, artificial, institutional environments and reintroducing relevant pathways toward adulthood. The bottom line here, the old ways were better. The old ways were the best. We've tried it all. We've destroyed entire generations. And now they're going to go back to this new thing, apprenticeships. Amazing.